Good afternoon, guys. We're back for the last episode of our podcast, Munimuni. And for today's episode, the title will be Pinoy Ako, Pinoy Tayo. And my co-host Robert and I will be talking about what makes a Filipino truly Filipino.
Wow, so this topic is very important, especially to me because I'm a Filipino living abroad. So I think I could input a lot of ideas about this. And it's a very interesting topic since, we should not just limit ourselves within the islands of the Philippines, but we should also talk about the lives of Filipinos outside our own boundaries. So let's go.
Okay, so for our icebreaker, we're going to be answering the top searches on Google. Actually, very popular yung icebreaker na ganito sa YouTube, if you guys see it. For our first set of questions, we're going to answer the what question. So, what do Filipinos look like, Robert, nga ba?
Well, it's a very tricky question actually because I've traveled a lot. I've been to 24 countries and I've seen a lot of Filipinos in different countries. And sometimes I get mistaken. I think that they are Filipinos, but they're not really Filipinos because you can be deceived by the look. Sometimes may mga tao na mukhang Pilipino pero yun pala from Peru, from Mexico and all that stuff. So it's a very tricky question. So we should also delve into different ideas on how we actually explain what being Filipino is. Does it depend on the looks? Does it depend on the language? Does it depend on the food? So marami tayong mga bagay na kailangan pag-usapan about that.
Tama ka. And especially nga, parang sabi mo nga rin, very mixed yung culture ng Filipinos. Like, ang dami na itsura na mestizo, chinito, na pag-uusapan din natin later. So, next question, what do Filipinos speak?
Wow, this is a very difficult question because I know that in the Philippines we have more than 100 languages, so we cannot really generalize that this country speaks a certain language. We have Bisaya, we have Kapampangan, we have Pangasinense and all that languages. So I think for this one, it's also a difficult question because languages don't mean that you belong to a certain area. There are many Filipinos living abroad who speak the language of the country where they live in. So I think this one is another difficult question, but of course we're going to learn more about that later.
Okay, next. Ito food. Super love ko yung food. Ano nga ba kinakain ng Filipinos?
Ako ang kinakain ko palagi, syempre rice, kanin, tapos ulam.
True.
Actually, adobo at sinigang, di ba? Super sarap. Kapag malamig, sinigang kasi mainit. And then kapag medyo okay naman yung weather, adobo kasi, di ba, super tasty.
Ito medyo natawa ako sa, ako, anong kinakain ko? Favorite ko actually, naalala ko yung STS na class ko since pinagawa kami ng sinigang and comfort food ko siya actually. So, yun, favorite ko yung sinigang. Ito, medyo natawa ako sa question na to. Are Filipinos Asian nga ba?
Ayan ang super hirap na question na like ko na encounter because when people say that I'm from the Philippines, I would say that we do not inhibit the culture of the typical Asians because, like a lot of Asian countries are good at math, they study so hard and they are very rigid in their lifestyle. So for this one, I think Filipinos are Asian in a sense, but we also inhibit other drops of culture. What about you?
I think this is connected to the next question na sasagutin natin na are Filipinos Hispanic? Since alam naman natin na na-colonize yung Philippines for so long, I think nagkakaroon din tayo ng existential crisis kung saan nga ba talaga tayo mas malapit if Hispanics nga ba or Asians. Yan.
Yeah. And the next question, are Filipinos Pacific Islander?
Are we? Are we nga ba?
Siguro pwede mo siyang i-base diba? Kasi if you would look at the Asian countries, they have tan skin, and then their eyes are not that, small compared to the other Asian countries. So medyo mukhang Filipino sila in a sense.
Ito, Robert, connected to sa'yo. Why do Filipinos work abroad?
It's a very difficult question. If you ask me this question, it will question my whole life, actually. But I think Filipinos work. It's not my case, but this is based on how I learned from the other Filipinos living here in Spain. I realized that they work abroad because they want to earn more money to support their family in the Philippines. And I think I do the same thing. I mean, I support my family in the Philippines as well, but not the same extent as how they do.
Mm-mm.
So maybe maraming reasons. Maybe some people just want to escape from the toxic government. Maybe some
Mm-mm.
people just want to live in a place wherein they would be accepted.
True,
So
true.
maraming reasons.
I think
Okay,
related
next
din
question.
yan
So what
sa ano, no? Like sa times ngayon, since nabanggit mo din yung gustong mag-escape sa government, parang ang daming nagbabalak na mag-abroad
exactly. But actually,
right now.
nakakatawa nga kasi after election, I mean, a lot of my friends know that I live here in Spain. This program is
Mm-mm.
actually because of the University of the Philippines. I'm working as a language assistant under the Ministry of
Mm,
Education, and I know that a lot of my friends back in UP really want to get out of the Philippines because of it. So a lot of them
mm-mm.
sent me a message like, how did you get there? How do I get to Spain as well? How do I work there? So parang nakakatawa lang kasi parang gusto nilang gumawa na ako ng agency for them to get here.
Mm-mm.
Anyway,
Okay, next question. Why do Filipinos love balikbayan boxes?
wow.
Ikaw, nakapagpadala ka na ba ng balikbayan box sa
Ay, super dami ko nang nakita ng balikbayan. I guess. I think because of, I don't know, maybe may satisfaction dun sa person na nagbibigay ng items
Mm-mm.
for their family, but at the same time may satisfaction din yung family na nakaka-receive ng items because you feel loved and you feel like you're showing your love to your family as well. And of course yung laman ng boxes may mga material things, and with these material things, like we get to compare the things that we have here in the they're in the Philippines, and the things that people have abroad. So parang it levels you up na you have high quality materials, you have things na wala yung ibang other people around you. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so for a last question, why do Filipinos celebrate festivals? Parang every month, parang may fiesta dito sa place namin malapit. Sa tingin ko parang sa dami nga ng culture, like minsan sobrang diverse kasi ng culture ng Philippines, 'di ba? Like every city may kanya-kanya silang fiesta. Sa amin mostly saints yung may fiesta, sa place namin Santo Niño. So, ayun nga, parang reflection din siya kung gaano tayo na-influence ng
exactly
ng different
ng
countries din, and kung gaano ka-religious din yung Philippines, 'di ba? So, ayun, feeling ko innate lang yung pagiging ma-celebrate ng Filipinos, hindi ko alam kung bakit. Pero parang nasa culture lang talaga natin yung i-celebrate yung mga bagay-bagay.
I think it's the same here in Spain because last time I went to a town and then we were just randomly called by like a family. They told me that they were having the fiesta. So I got to talk with the family and all that. They told me that, oh, this week is our fiesta. And then they told me that the next week, the other street or the other barrio will also have their own fiesta. So imagine in a town if there are like 20 streets. So basically you could cover the whole year having fiesta, and they just belong to the same town. So
True.
I think we pretty much resemble the same culture, right? So let's go to the main topic. For the first part, let us delve into this question. What is a Filipino? So how did the term Filipino evolve and how it was created? So what are your thoughts about that?
Actually, we tackled this sa PI 100 class when we talked about veneration and yung article niya. Na during the Spanish period, yung term na Filipino was referred to Philippine-born Spanish or Creoles ang tinatawag nila, and natives were actually referred to as Indio. Napag-usapan na namin to sa past na episodes, and yun nga, parang not every Filipino na nasa Spain during propaganda period were Indios. Originally, yung Círculo Hispano-Filipino was dominated by Creoles and Peninsulares. So, si Rizal at yung ibang Indios in Paris used the term Indios Bravos after they realized the difference between Creoles and genuine Filipinos, especially in propaganda organizations, turning the epithet into a badge of honor. So, yung pagiging matalino or yung intellect ni Rizal paved the way for the winning of the name Filipino for the natives of the land. So the appropriation of the term Filipino was only a limited victory because the users of the term were limited Filipinos themselves. Parang nag-gatekeep pa kung gagamitin natin sa present terms yung term na Filipino. And the term was only applied to those who spoke for the people, not really the people themselves. So medyo may different parang sa classes, ganun.
Exactly. So if you would think of the term Filipino, you would think about a cloud of ideas already, right? But on the other hand, this
yung history
term
niya
was
deeper pa
actually,
pala.
yeah, exactly. So rooted pa pala siya sa history before everything else. So that's very interesting. Okay, now, what makes Rizal a Filipino? So since we're studying Rizal, what makes him a Filipino? Since we first had this icebreaker, how do Filipinos look like? Do you have to speak a specific language? Do you have to eat certain kind of food? So what makes Rizal a Filipino?
Okay, so si Rizal actually, he is from Calamba, Laguna. And interesting na yung descent niya is actually not pure Filipino, pero may halo siyang Chinese Filipino since yung very big yung family niya and yung parents nga niya may Chinese Filipino descent. And yung social class naman ni Rizal, ang sabi niya hindi naman daw siya mayaman or hindi rin siya mahirap. Tapos, yung pinag-aralan naman niya at a very young age, parents lang niya siya natuto and nagka-tutors lang siya na Latin. And self-taught siya and he went to a school in Binyan, Laguna. Tapos, for college, he attended Ateneo de Manila University for his Bachelor of Arts degree and UST, as well as Central University of Madrid, wherein he took up medicine and philosophy.
So, yung Central University of Madrid ngayon is already called Universidad Complutense de Madrid. So, ngayon, parang if you will think about that university, parang medyo pang elite pa rin siya, pang medyo social.
Yeah.
So, if that is our resemblance of someone's wealth right now. So maybe if we would look at Rizal's experience during that time in the perspective of the present situation, maybe you would think that mayaman siya, super talino niya, and all that.
Actually, yung matuto ka nga lang nung time nila, di ba? Parang yung education at their time was a privilege already.
Exactly.
So, yung pag-claim ni Rizal na hindi siya mayaman, is parang syempre mapapaisip ka, di ba? Na may Ateneo na nga, tapos mga, until now, very prestigious universities to sa Philippines. Tapos makapag-aral ka pa abroad. So,
exactly.
Ayun. So, since napag-usapan na natin yung time niya abroad, napag-imamalaki naman ni Rizal na nakakapagsalita siya ng 22 languages.
Wow, ang dami naman. So ba, ilang languages ba yung kaya mong i-speak?
Actually, natuto ko ng Italian for college. Nag-12 units ako ng Ital. Pero hanggang dun lang yata yung outside Filipino.
Of course, you speak Italian, Filipino, English. Oh, you already speak 3 languages.
22! Baka hindi ako maka-keep up.
Parang learning a language is so difficult. How would you be able to learn 22 languages, right?
And included pa dito yung Filipino, English, Spanish, Japanese, French, German, Chinese, Latin, and Malay. And
wow, that's insane.
Yun, oo. Tapos kapag nagsusulat pa siya, mostly written in Spanish pa yung gawa niya. Pero may onti naman siyang sinulat in Filipino. Pero siya na mismo nagsabi na medyo nahirapan din siya na magsulat in Filipino. And nakapunta na rin siya sa Japan, England, Switzerland, Germany, Italy, Americas, France, and Hong Kong. So, di ba, parang isipin mo kung ganun nga yung claim niya. Balik tayo sa claim niya na hindi sila mayaman.
Hindi siya
parang
mayaman.
Isipin mo, yung ngayon nga lang na travel, di ba parang ang mahal-mahal na. Paano pa yung time nila? Tas hindi to basta-basta na Asia ha. As in, nag-world tour talaga si Rizal.
Exactly. So I think during this time, baka hindi pa nila kailangan ng mga visa and all that stuff. Because I
Mm-mm.
remember before, like the visa idea was not yet established. And yung
Mm-mm.
Schengen visa was just established in 1999, I guess.
Mm-mm.
So baka medyo madali siyang nakapunta. Pero yung thought na magkano yung ginagastos mo every time you travel. Right?
True.
And during that time, wala pang piso fare ng Cebu Pacific or wala pang airline promotion ng Philippine Airlines or wala kang ma-accumulate na mga miles pa nagta-travel
Oo.
ka. Diba? So, grabe lang. Saan kaya siya kumukuha ng gold bars or ng money for him to travel, right?
Italiano Goldie.
Sana all, di ba?
Okay, next.
Now, so for the fourth part, let us talk about what makes a Filipino, di ba? So this is related to how Rizal describes a Filipino or how or what makes Rizal a Filipino. So first part, let's go to the ethnicity. Is it really just on ethnicity or are there other factors? Okay, the Filipinos in the Philippines are a mix of ancestries, right? We already know this. A lot of us have Spanish blood or some do have Chinese blood, Japanese and all that. With this, can we really have people who can identify as pure Filipino?
True.
Diba? Ang daming mga Pilipino sa Pinas na may mga mix, for
Pinoy.
example. Exactly. For example, meron dyan yung mga people na may surname na Tan, Tiu, Si, Gawang. Sa University of the Philippines, sa UP, and tayo magiging classmate na may mga...
Oh, lalo na sa BA.
Exactly, diba? Sa BA. So, paano mo masasabi na Pilipino sila kung ganito yung surname nila, diba? Ganito yung unang mong impression. And for another example, Spanish Filipinos, diba? Ang daming mga mall na owned by Ayala and Zobel, but when you look it up on the internet, they are considered as Filipino. So how do you really judge if somebody's Filipino kung ganito yung surname mo na Ayala, Zobel? Diba? Actually, for me, ang apelido ko is Vasquez. So it's very Spanish, but I don't have Spanish blood. Diba? And also there are many Filipino Americans, Japanese Filipinos, right? And also apart from that, is it also because of the languages spoken? Or anyway, baka kasama na to sa ethnicity. So, going back, there are around 120 to 175 languages spoken in the Philippines.
Wow.
So, super dami, right? Whenever I talk about this to my colleagues here in Spain, they would usually get surprised because here in Spain, they only have the 5 languages, I guess. And how come our country has more than 120, 175? That's insane. So, does this mean that the more languages you speak, the more you are Filipino?
Oh,
diba? So,
ngayon ko lang naisip yan.
Diba? Ang super hirap. Pero we have Filipino as our lingua franca. So basically that's the national language of the Philippines. But there are many variations of Filipino. Meron tayo yung konyo, which I don't know. In Spanish, it's a very bad word. But konyo in Filipino means...
Ano meaning niya in Spanish?
Konyo in Spanish means the reproductive organ of the female.
Okay.
So super nakakatawa kasi I told this thing to my colleagues before and they were laughing because like how come you describe somebody who's like upper middle class?
Paano nga ba?
Diba? And then in reality the word konyo means the reproductive organ. So super funny lang. Okay, so what else?
So yun nga, 'di ba? Parang sa dami ng languages. Tapos sabi mo nga yung surname mo Vasquez, it comes from like a Spanish descent. Ako din like Victoria, hindi siya yung usual na Filipino surnames. Tapos naalala ko lang tuloy, napaisip ako before if meron nga ba talaga kaming halo. And mapapaisip ka din like sa ancestors mo and sa laki ng families ng mga Pinoy, 'di ba? Parang minsan pag family reunion, may mamimit ka na lang bigla na tita mo pala, ganon, or second cousin. And isang example dito sila Rizal na yung primary family lang nila alone, meron na agad siyang 9 na kapatid na babae at isang lalaking kapatid. So, imagine mo kung gaano pa kalawak yung naaabot nung ancestry nila, di ba?
Exactly, di ba? Super big family nila. Actually, for me, in my case, sa family ko, super laking family din namin kasi yung dad ko, 12 sila in total na siblings. And then, they all have the same surname, Vasquez. And then, like if you would think about this big family having the same surname, Spanish-sounding surname, you would imagine that in a neighborhood, maybe like more than half of the neighborhood ay Spanish or Spanish
Mm-mm.
descent because Spanish yung apelido nila. Pero, like since we have different assessment of how we judge, I mean, how we describe a Filipino. So, hindi mo talaga siya pwedeng i-judge completely just based on the surname or
Oo.
how big the family is. For this part, we're gonna talk about OFWs na nasa abroad, of course, or maybe overseas Filipinos or mga people na nasa Pilipinas.
Mm-mm.
Okay? Can we say that Pinoy pride is just super strong? Let's try to compare. Are OFWs less of a Filipino? Right? For me, in my own opinion, I mean, I've been living here in Spain for 3 years now. I
Mm-mm.
wouldn't say that I'm less of a Filipino because, first of all, I have so many Filipino friends. I usually mingle with my Filipino friends and not my local friends here. So, social-wise, puro Filipino yung kasama ko. We talk in Filipino, we talk about our life in the Philippines, we talk about, the common things that we do in the Philippines. So, I think this idea of a Filipino living abroad would make him less of a Filipino. I think it's just a matter of how you assimilate to the culture. Because, for example, in my case, I've been living here but hindi ako fully na-assimilate. I mean, I have some local friends, pero yung culture ko, yung pagkain ko, yung language ko, yung how I style myself, how I dress, and all that stuff, I think it's completely Filipino. It's just that I'm living abroad.
I think
So,
may
according to
ma-relate
that,
lang din ako. I've
okay.
had a lot of high school batchmates na nag-migrate na sila to the US. Is parang very Americanized or whitewashed na yung nila culture. Alam mo yun,
Same field.
parang pag
Yeah.
hindi naman yung pananalita, I get na it really adjusts kasi yung kausap mo everyday. Pero yung alam mo yun, yung very different na sila na
Exactly.
pati yung pagkain, minsan, nakikita mo ba yun? Like, sa nagiging skit siya minsan na yung food na Pinoy, ayaw nila, ganun. Parang, nandidiri sila. Kasi yung very strong din yung flavors and yung scent ng Filipino food, diba?
Exactly.
So, parang nahihiya sila if they eat it in front of their friends, ganun. Yun lang,
Yeah. Pero nakakatuwa rin, di ba, kapag may mga narinig na interview ng mga artistang Filipino sa US, for example, they would always say that I miss pancit, I miss ensaymada, I miss adobo. So that,
pero sana,
that makes
diba,
us
parang, usually, sana hindi nila ginagawang personality trait. Alam mo yun, yung they just want the good side of being Filipino. Parang ganun. Pero yung
exactly.
bad
Kasi
things
minsan, di
with
ba,
it.
parang if you bank on your culture, you would get more sympathy from more people. So sometimes maybe sinasabi lang talaga nila, I love Philippine, I love adobo, I love this. Pero in
parang si
reality, they
Jokoy,
don't
ganun.
really eat it on a regular, diba? They don't really eat it in a regular basis. Right. So, okay, can we consider Rizal, since we're talking about OFWs or Filipinos abroad, can we consider Rizal as an OFW? I mean, OFW stands for Overseas Filipino Worker, right? Since he lived outside the Philippines longer, right? So, what would you say about that?
Actually, napaisip ako dyan. Kasi I think different yung pupunta ka ng abroad to yung motive mo kasi na pagpunta ng abroad, yung nagdi-differentiate, I guess. Kasi may ibang tao na they go there to make their lives better, ganon. Parang sa isip nila, mas maganda yung buhay doon.
Yeah.
I think si Rizal, I don't think he's like that. Or talagang may privilege lang kasi siya na nakakapunta siya abroad. Kasi yun nga, mayaman, matalino.
Yeah.
But I don't think OFW, kasi yung background niya di ba? Parang hindi naman lahat yung mga OFW usually, they work talaga to make, yung may family sila sa Pilipinas na binubuhay. Si Rizal wala naman, di ba? Parang,
yeah. So, since OFWs, right, imagine, kapag umuwi sa Pilipinas yung mga OFW, sometimes they tend to emulate yung pagiging foreigner whenever they visit the Philippines.
Parang ibang-iba na sila.
Diba?
Justified.
Numuwi ako last time. Parang natatawa yung mga kaibigan ko kasi parang nag-serve sila ng rice and then all that stuff. Kasi I mean, it's not very normal to eat rice here. Kasi of course, if you are at home, you can cook rice. But if you are outside, you cannot eat rice. So when they served me rice, I was like, ayoko po na mag-rice, medyo busog pa ako. And they were like, ang arte mo, masyado ka ng Espanyol. I was like, it's not that I am
Nasasanay
really
talaga
for
eh.
yeah,
Oo.
you get what I mean. And medyo busog ka pa, so why would you eat rice? Kasi sa Pilipinas, it's very common na medyo busog ka lang, tapos mag-midnight
Kakanin ka
snack
pa
or
rin.
midnight snack mo, silog, di ba? Busog ka pa rin. So, yun lang, parang may mga ganun talaga tayong moments in life. Okay, next one, let's talk about proud Pinoy, that term na very naging controversial sa YouTube because ang dami-dami talaga mga YouTuber na laging talk about Philippines or Filipinos good singers or Filipinos intelligent or Filipinos beautiful. Diba? So, let's talk about proud Pinoy. So, we have so many notable Filipinos around the world. Okay, number one, dyan, ex-presidential candidate, Manny Pacquiao, who is super famous for boxing, of course. Actually,
hindi naman pagkakaela na magaling talaga siya.
So when I met some foreigners before, when I told them that I'm from the Philippines, they initially said, "Oh, Manny Pacquiao." So that was their initial thought after hearing that I'm from the Philippines. So, diba, ganun ka famous si Manny Pacquiao na when some other people hear Philippines, they think about Manny Pacquiao, right? And also, apart from boxing, meron din naman tayo sa entertainment. Meron dyan si Bruno Mars na half Filipino, right? We have Vanessa Hudgens, super famous din. Hailey Steinfeld, right? Actress and singer. Olivia Rodrigo na nagpe-payway na.
Olivia Rodrigo, yes.
Olivia Rodrigo. Parang I think in a few years siya magiging one of the divas in the US. And also, we have Dave Bautista, WWE and actor. Right? So, ang dami talaga Filipinos all over the world.
True. Tapos nakakatawa din yung Pinoy na kahit hindi sila full Filipino, we claim them as ours. Parang ganon. Parang super nag-ignite yung pagiging proud Pinoy nga. Kapag nalalaman nila na may Filipino blood yung isang tao.
And may super funny akong meme na nakita sa Facebook last time na kapag ang artista daw sa Pilipinas hinahanapan ng foreign blood para meron tayong masabing negative about them. Like, ay, kaya lang naman maganda yan kasi half American yan, half French yan. And then, when we look at the Filipinos abroad, and then they're making their way there, they're becoming famous there abroad, we look at the Filipino blood. So, it's like the flip side of what we do for artists in the Philippines and artists abroad. Diba? So, medyo condescending yung ganong mindset ng Filipinos.
Okay, yun nga, since Robert, yun ang pag-usapan natin. Di ba, ang dami-dami nating mga nakilalang Filipinos during the present time. Pero let's go back. Ano nga ba yung meaning ng pagiging Filipino talaga? Especially sa time ng mga Kastila, panahon ni Rizal, and ng other oppressors at mga nanakop sa atin. At especially sa panahon natin ngayon. So, for me, honestly, yun nga, tulad ng sinabi ko, hindi yung gusto mo lang yung magandang side niya. Ready ka din dapat natanggapin yung bad side ng pagiging Filipino na I think we can relate to now. Since one common thing na mapapansin mo is lahat ng mga mako-consider mong Pilipino, yung mga may pinaglaban noon at pinaglalaban ngayon. Diba? Parang especially with the recent elections.
True. If you have the voice and you have the power to influence other people, then use it. And for me naman, I think that being a Filipino should not reflect on the looks, on the race, on the language, and the personality. I think being a Filipino is, it's a personal acceptance that cannot be seen by other people. Because sometimes, for example, may mga artists in the US na they are proud to be Filipino, but in reality, they are not. And I think they are just using it as a way for them to not to be discriminated, diba? So for me, as long as you accept being Filipino deep down, deep inside your heart, and then I can say that you consider yourself as Filipino because meron tayong mga na-experience na racism, may mga na-experience tayo na mga judgment from other people when we say Filipino. So I think some people do that as a way of, as a coping mechanism. But it's not their fault. It's the fault of the society because discrimination exists, judgment exists. If these all issues were to be addressed, then I think everyone can be proudly can say that they're proudly Filipino, that they can like fully raise their flag saying that I'm Filipino, I eat adobo every day, and not actually compromising some parts of your lifestyle,
Mm-mm.
right? So for me, as a Filipino, we have to do our best. We have to do our part to change the society we're in right now. Let's try to fight against discrimination. Let's try to fight against homophobia and all that stuff. So in the end, we can fully become Filipino. We can show to everyone that we are Filipino without
Yes.
thinking of all these issues.
Exactly. So yan nga, at the end of the day naman, if mahal mo yung bansa mo at may ginagawa ka about it, hindi lang sa itsura mo na or yung color ng skin mo, it all boils down or comes down to what's inside. And ayun, yun naman talaga yung
Exactly.
wala naman
Wow.
siya sa packaging, kumbaga.
True. So super damning insights. Thank you so much for this very wonderful talk, and I learned
Thank
a lot,
you.
diba? And it's just super heartwarming knowing that we share the same sentiments of all
True.
these topics, right?
Ayan. So thank you so much for listening to the last episode of our podcast, Munimuni. Again, I am your host, Isabel Victoria, with...
And I am your host, Robert Vasquez.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you again.
Buenos dias, chicos, chicas. So, dito tayo ngayon sa Valencia, Spain, kung saan magkakaroon tayo ng supermarket trade. So, hindi ito bag raid, hindi ito house raid. Pupunta tayo sa supermarket at titignan natin kung ano yung mga product na meron sila dito at meron din tayo sa Pilipinas. Titignan din natin kung ano yung mga product na meron sila dito na almost similar kung ano yung meron tayo sa Pilipinas. So, andito tayo sa fruit section at titignan natin kung ano yung mga prutas na meron sila dito. Meron silang mango, pero iba yung kulay, di ba? Parang medyo red and green yung color. Papaya, na very common. Usually, makikita mo lang yan sa mga backyard sa Pilipinas. And meron din silang pineapple. And surprisingly, ang pangalan ng ang tawag sa pineapple dito ay same, of course, pinya din. Tapos ayan naman, meron din silang pipino na €1.49. Meron din kalabasa, exactly kalabasa yung tawag. So ito yung itsura ng kalabasa nila dito. Sa part naman na to, ito yung mga cream. Ibig sabihin ng nata is cream. Diba meron sa atin yung nata de coco. Siguro kapag tinranslate mo siya literally, it means cream of coconut, parang ganun. Pero dito, yung nata means cream lang talaga siya. At saka meron din sila ditong garbanzos. Ayan, tingnan mo. Usually nakikita natin to sa halo-halo sa Pilipinas, di ba? And garbanzos din yung tawag, surprisingly. At syempre, because I live in Valencia, super important ng rice sa culture nila kasi dito nag-originate yung paella. And for example, this one, yung isang kilo ng rice, 95 cents lang. So that's around 50 pesos. So hindi naman nalalayo sa presyo ng Pilipinas knowing na developed country ang Spain, di ba? Medyo nakakahiya yung inflation rate sa atin na ang mahal ng rice, which is basic need. Supposedly mura siya so everyone could afford it. But no, di ba? So super interesting lang na here, kahit hindi ka masyadong mayaman, makakain ka ng quality na product at of course yung rice na very important sa daily meals. Ito naman yung mga cleaning materials. Surprisingly, wala silang walis tambo dito. So, as a Filipino, di ba, kinalakihan natin na minsan pinapalo tayo ng parents natin using the walis tambo. Pero dito, imagine, ito yung papalo sa'yo. Ang sakit nito, grabe. Pag nasa supermarket talaga ako, ang pinaka-reflection ko is kung gaano ka-affordable yung mga products dito based on the minimum wage ng mga tao dito. So, imagine, if bibili ka ng milk dito, na isang box ng milk, it will only cost you how much is this? 90 cents. So for example, this box of fresh milk will just cost 90 cents. At meron pang mas mura if gusto mo yung ibang type ng milk. Like this one, 70 cents lang siya. Imagine kung gaano kamahal yung mga products sa Pilipinas na hindi siya proportional sa minimum wage. So, that's kind of saddening, di ba? Pero, of course, we have to do our part. Ay, ito, super interesting na thing. Ang tawag sa bubblegum sa kanila, chicles. Pero sa Tagalog, di ba? Chiclet ang tawag. So, andito naman tayo sa alcohol area. So, ang daming wines dito sa... You can get this one, just 120 €1.20. Super mura, so around 70 or 80 pesos lang siya. And of course, as a Spanish, as a Spanish culture, mahilig silang uminom ng beer. And surprisingly, meron sila ditong San Miguel beer. So ayan, meron silang San Miguel beer at ang presyo niya ay 56 cents lang per piece. So that's around 35 or 40 pesos. So super mura lang niya. And nakakatuwa kasi 'di ba, when people think about San Miguel, it reminds them of the Filipino culture. Kasi 'di ba yung mga foreigner ang hilig uminom ng San Miguel pag nasa Pilipinas sila. Pero dito sa Spain, super common din ng San Miguel dahil as far as I know, parang a few years ago, yung may-ari ng San Miguel sa Pilipinas, pinili na nila yung San Miguel Corporation dito sa Spain. So, tapos ito naman, meron din silang albondigas. Alam niyo ba yung albondigas sa Pilipinas? It means yung soup na may meatballs. Pero dito sa Spain, when you say albondigas, it just means meatballs. So kahit anong klase siya, kahit may sauce, kahit fried lang siya, kahit normal lang siya, albondigas pa rin yung tawag sa kanya. So, also meron sila ditong kayos, which literally means kalyo sa Tagalog, di ba? Nilagyan nila ng sauce and ang tawag na sa kanya ay kayos con garbanzos. So ayan. Tapos nandito tayo sa cured meat area. Meron sila ditong chorizo. 'Di ba? Unlike sa Pilipinas, yung chorizo nila dito is flat na parang na circle, yung usually nasa pizza. Pero sa Pilipinas kasi yung chorizo, yung nilalagay sa pansit, 'di ba, na para siyang stick. Pero dito, naka-circle siya na ganito. Ito pa, ang sasarap ng mga cheese nila. And ang tawag sa cheese, of course, in Tagalog, queso. Queso din dito. So apart from all these products, I would just like to highlight na medyo binavalue ng mga Spanish people yung mga healthy food. So, for example, this area, may mga salad, may mga sandwich. Ayan, so it's just a reflection of how they take care of their health. Unlike sa Philippines, talaga tayong kumakain ng mga medyo masebo, matabang pagkain. Dito usually gulay sila and usually just like plain meat na hinit up sa pan. So andito naman tayo ngayon sa bakery nila, and one thing na medyo magugustuhan nyo ay meron silang empanada. Pero iba yung itsura, and ang tawag dito is empanada de espinacas. Ito naman is empanada de tomate. Iba yung texture, iba yung flour na ginamit. Tapos makapal siya. Pero look, yung itsura niya same as the empanada in the Philippines. So medyo pa-curve lang din siya ng konti. Pero nagkaiba nga lang siya sa texture. Ayan, at dahil medyo napagod tayo at pinawisan ako dun sa pag-ikot sa supermarket, what's the best way to recover but to eat? So kakain tayo ngayon ng empanada. So yun na nga, no, dyan nagtatapos ang ating supermarket trade for today. Pero ano nga ba ang ating conclusion? So apparently, after more than 300 years of colonization ng mga Spaniards sa Pilipinas, ang daming bagay na naipasa sa ating kultura. Kabilang na nga dyan yung pagkain, yung language, at of course, yung kanilang kultura. At after natin gawin ang supermarket trade na ito, napakaraming bagay, no, na meron sila dito at meron tayo sa Pilipinas. Halimbawa, yung albondigas, yung beer, yung rice, yung garbanzos. Pero maraming bagay pa rin tayong pwedeng pag-reflectan. Halimbawa, yung presyo ng mga pagkain. So, kung ikaw ay nagkatrabaho dito at kumikita ka ng sapat, kaya mong bumili ng pagkain na sustentuhan ng iyong pamilya. Halimbawa, yung rice, napakamura, di ba? So, just €1, kaya mong pakainin yung pamilya mo. Hindi tulad sa Pilipinas na kailangan mong pipirin ang bawat patak ng iyong sweldo. So, I think, apart from the culture, apart from the language, apart from the food that we have learned today, ang daming bagay na mag-set sa mind natin na, marami tayong kailangan pang matutunan at marami pa tayong kailangan i-develop sa ating bansa. Pero yun nga, maraming salamat sa pakikinig at panonood sa aking vlog na ito, at sana sa susunod ay marami pa akong maipakita sa inyo mga bagay dito sa Espanya. Hanggang sa muli, bye-bye!